Obviously, Florida wants what Georgia's got right now, which is the premier or one of the premier programs in college football. And one game doesn't make a season, so you can't really talk in totality about the Gators after their loss to Oregon State, a top 15 team, a game they should have lost, any more than you necessarily can looking back on their win over Utah, who won the Pac-12. Um, the question becomes, though, is this heading in the right direction? Can you tell that already? And the answer to the second part is no. It doesn't. You can't tell that right now. And you know, at the end of the day, it's easy to compare Nick Saban's first season at Alabama and Kirby's first season at Georgia because those are the direct parallels to programs that took off after a rough first season. Obviously, Georgia's was not nearly as rough as Alabama's was, but they were in the same ballpark. And you look at all of this for the Gators. This is the fourth losing season in 10 seasons. I mean, in 10 years with different coaches. Four different coaches have had losing seasons at Florida in the last 10 years. Jim McElwain, Will Muschamp, Dan Mullen, and now Billy Napier. So as I've been saying for a while here, and I really mean this when I say it, I have a tremendous amount of respect and understanding for what the Gators are and have been and what they can be. They are not close to being where they need to be right now. And I don't know if Billy Napier is the right person or not. But the first season did not give us an indication that he is. And I wanted to talk about that because I think, when you talk about Georgia's direct rival, a team that they'll play forever, I don't know if Georgia will play Georgia Tech forever. I hope they do, but I don't know that they will. They will always play the Florida Gators. Uh, that is their biggest game. It's their number one rivalry. It is the game that in most seasons defines the year for Georgia and for the Gators for that matter. It doesn't mean they don't both play other big games. I mean, Georgia plays Auburn, they play Tech. They often play, Western schools that are a big deal. Florida plays. They both play Tennessee. Those are huge games for both, but they're not the same as Georgia, Florida. And when you look at, you know, what Billy Napier started with this year, uh, I did not expect a losing season. I'll tell you that. The Utah loss, excuse me, the win over Utah, that did not make a lot of sense to me. I thought Florida really played well that night. The Kentucky loss, that's when I thought, okay, this is about what I thought Florida would be. They're going to fight you hard, but they don't have a lot of skill, and they don't. And then the problem for the Gators was not the middle part of the season. I mean, you could see at the start, y'all, the day Georgia beat South Carolina, you could see that there were some issues. And that was the day that Florida had to rally at home to beat South Florida. Hey, just real quick, make sure a lot of people are doing this right now and you're running out of time for Christmas. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION today and I'll get it out to you. But hurry up and get it. The link is down below. If you don't get it today or the next day or two, you're really I mean, I'm gonna still send it, but I don't know that it's gonna get there before Christmas. So order it now, and you know it'll get there. But when you look at that, I watched that South Florida game, and that's when I knew for sure this was not a good Florida team. They were surviving, and by the end of the Tennessee game, they were 2-2. Now they fought Tennessee, they fought Georgia to some degree too, but the middle stretch there from you know Eastern Washington, really through the Georgia game, you could say, well, at least these guys are really competing. And of course, a week later, they thumped Texas A&M on the road. I was not surprised by that either. And it looked like they'd really kind of settled things down with the thumping of Texas A&M and then just the beating they put on South Carolina, a 32-point win for the Florida Gators over Carolina. But this close is hard to ignore. Um, and really, the loss to Vanderbilt in particular in Nashville, where they were just outclassed by Vanderbilt, that's disturbing. I mean, Georgia lost to Vanderbilt. People forget. Maybe some people don't. People forget Georgia lost to Vanderbilt in Kirby's first year. Um, but the way in which they lost was not at all the same as the way Vanderbilt beat Florida. I mean, Vanderbilt beat Florida's brains in. Uh, they just did. 31-24, but the Gators scored late and all this. I mean, it was 31-17, I think, late in that game, and Florida scored, and and the loss to Florida State was not the end of the world. And then you saw a lot of guys leave before the Oregon State game. Um, Oregon State was going to beat Florida. That's just what that was. I mean, Florida couldn't score. So, but it's the kind of the parts to me that stick out that are just really troublesome. The South Florida loss, the loss to Vanderbilt. Excuse me, I said South Florida loss. It felt like a loss. The win, the game winning kick on the last play of the game, the fourth quarter rally against South Florida. Not no. And the curious loss to Vanderbilt. Um, you know, yeah, and to some degree, the way they lost to Oregon State, even though they did not have a lot of players, they had 3 weeks to get ready for a team that was top 15. You're telling me, Florida's not within 4 touchdowns of any Pac-12 team. They just beat earlier this year the Pac-12 champion. But I think if you take a step back and you look at everything that they're trying to do down there, I think my worry in the case of Florida, um, I just don't know that they have the institutional buy-in the way that you need to win at the level Georgia, Alabama, et cetera, are continuing to do it. Now they're just outside the top 10 in recruiting, but they're behind Alabama, Georgia, LSU, what will soon be Oklahoma. Well, let me start over. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee. They're going to be behind 6 of the 16 teams in the future in recruiting in the SEC. That's just not going to get it done. It's not going to get it done. Everybody knows that. And, they don't have a single consensus 5-star player that they've got committed. It's just not good enough. And I think I'm not sure if I'm smart enough to know is if, I can tell you right now that Florida, if they really want to win, they've got to get more serious about football. And I don't think they're serious in a way that they need to be. And I think as an athletic department, uh, it's not been a good run here lately. It's not been a good run. And, um, they were going to fire Mike White. Well, then why didn't you fire him? Well, if you were going to fire him, why didn't you fire him? So that wasn't true. He chose to leave to go to Georgia. Now there's probably, hey, he could have been fired, but he wasn't, right? He left well after he was going to be terminated, if he was going to be. So Mike White restarts the clock at Georgia, and the Gators get to start brand new in basketball, and we'll see if that works out for them. But I think you look around, and this program as an athletic department, they're just not what they used to be at all. I I think the handling of the departure of Dan Mullen, that whole year was strange. Um, I think you have to hold your. This is why we cannot have kings in college football. Kirby Smart cannot be the king at Georgia because there has to be accountability at all times. Period. And once you get into a situation where the football coach is king, then he starts checking out the way that Dan Mullen did. I mean, I also do wonder if they move so fast on Dan Mullen because of X, Y, or Z. I mean, I think Dan Mullen is a better coach than Billy Napier. Um, I don't see right now 1 year at Florida how you could argue that that is not a true statement, but that's 1 year at Florida. So um, I think so. Florida's not where they need to be on a lot of different levels. Now, it's not a disaster like Georgia Tech um, or whatever, but we've seen the power of Florida. I mean, I have in my lifetime. they've never been this choppy over a 10-year stretch. I mean, you have to consider that, you know, Jim McElwain had a couple good seasons at Florida. Now they were getting blown out every time they played a meaningful game, but he had a couple good seasons at Florida. And Dan Mullen was probably got them closer to the promised land than anybody since Urban Meyer. He did get them closer. But this is a program that from, 1991 to 2009, played for four national championships, I think it was. It might have been more than that. They won three. Um, and, you know, the run of Urban Meyer for a 4-year stretch, from 6 to 9, I think they lost like 4 games or something like that. I mean, it was a heck of a run. But they, we've also seen now, I think the question becomes, is Florida a situation where, it's a great job or it's a really tough job? I mean, it might be both of those things, but we've seen now several coaches not succeed at Florida. And we've seen two coaches at Florida succeed, but they succeeded at other places too. I mean, Urban Meyer won a national championship at Ohio State. He may as well have won. No, Steve Spurrier may as well have won a national championship at South Carolina, beating Clemson 5 years in a row. So those were exceptional Hall of Fame coaches. Dan Mullen is as close to those two as we've seen at Florida in the last 40 years. So is it that Florida had two really great runs and this is kind of what they are? I mean, are they Auburn? Like they can really get hot and be good, or they can be a train wreck? Georgia's just never been like that. I mean, not this century. And Georgia has one losing season this century. Florida has four in this past 10 years. Georgia has three losing seasons from like 1980 until today. Florida has four in the last 10 years. It's hard to comprehend how they can be this bad. And I do not think it will continue that they're this bad. But I also don't know that they're going to be much more than 10-3. And I think 10-3 Dan Mullen gives you a better chance of really winning than 10-3 Billy Napier. But I reserve the right to be wrong. Billy's got to get guys in there that really want to get the job done. But what Spurrier never had at Florida was Kirby Smart at Georgia. And, Kirby's already accomplished more at Georgia than Spurrier did at the same amount of time at Florida. Now, that's really saying something. Florida State looks better. They're a functional program suddenly. That was not the case for a long time. All these things matter. What directly matters to the Gators is what Georgia's doing and what Florida State's doing. What sort of matters to the Gators is what Miami's doing, what Auburn's doing, and what Alabama's doing. That's the sort of hierarchy of the thing. Tennessee, yeah, to some degree, but Tennessee and Florida, they don't really want to run into a ton on the recruiting scale, the recruiting trail. A lot of the guys I just mentioned do. But I think, Florida's not serious about football and athletics, it seems, the way that they used to be. And I think that's the number one problem. But do you think that Florida is headed in the right direction with Billy Napier? Let me know down below.